Cageside with John Morgan.
And we are back once again, another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. Fury Ngannou. Damn, did that turn some heads. What does it all mean? We're going to jump into all that. Chimaev, he doesn't break his hand, as earlier reported, but did tear a ligament. What does that mean? Conor McGregor over in Saudi holds court, looking healthy, looking great. Sets a timeline for his return and a potential opponent. We're going to break it all down. The man who knows everything about everything in this game, the Nostradamus, as I call him. You can follow him on Twitter, JohnMorgan_MMA. His name is John Morgan. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. It's going to be a busy week, so I'm excited for everything that's coming up for me personally and the CFFC crew. But, man, still kind of basking in the afterglow of that event that was I just thought delivered on more entertainment value than I ever could have imagined. A great one. So there was even though we didn't have a big UFC event, man, we still ended up with a big event and had some fun with it.
So I'm gonna save this, but I have this amazing quote that applies to Fury Ngannou from this past weekend. I'm going to save it. I'm going to tease it a little bit. It's going to come out of left field. It's going to come from this very wise person. We'll see if you get the reference, but it is so applicable. It's like, it just hit me this morning. But anyways, let's just jump into it. Saturday afternoon from Saudi Arabia, Tyson Fury defeats Francis Ngannou via split decision, 10 rounds. Now, me and you, we are fight fans. You know, we just like watching people get punched in the face. Now, I'm going to be here and say I'm the first to admit that I don't know the exact judging criteria for boxing. Layman's terms, what that means is like, listen, the way I think it goes, if one person hits the other person more over the course of 10 rounds, they win. If they're even, then if the harder shots, they win, right? They land, but I don't know. Right? So I think that I don't know if Francis won. I'm not going to sit here and put on my cap and say all this. I'm just going to say what I think we can talk about is what does this all mean?
Yeah, listen, I want to make that same disclaimer as well. There's a reason. Look, we are mixed martial arts enthusiasts, and I feel like we're experts in that field. But I never want to pretend I'm an expert in a field that I'm not an expert in, right? And that's boxing. I tuned in for the big fights. I bought this pay-per-view. I wanted to watch it. I was entertained. But to say that, hey, here's my round-by-round analysis of who I thought won, I think would be a disservice to everybody. Now, that said, I thought it was really, really close, man. I thought there was a real chance that Francis Ngannou was going to get the decision win. I thought maybe even a draw might be a possibility. You know, I thought there were some really close rounds that I think, you know, when Francis is looking back, he'll wish he would have been a little bit more busy late in there because I think he really could have clinched that fight. But, man, you're right. It's so weird because it's almost like as we talk about it, the result doesn't even matter. Like, who cares that he lost a split decision, right? The bottom line is he went in there. He went 10 rounds with Tyson Fury, one of the best heavyweights of this generation, looked like he belonged in there, scored the only knockdown of the fight, threw a Superman punch at one point, and just generally won the night. It's such a weird and unique circumstance because it's like the actual result of the fight doesn't matter at all, and all that we know is Francis Ngannou's stock just goes soaring through the roof right now. And there's so many options on the table, man. There's mixed martial arts on the table. You know, he's got a contract with PFL. There's more boxing on the table. I've got to think more people are going to want to watch it. Because like I said, he proved he belonged. And so I think they're going to watch him. But number two, you know, there's some boxing enthusiasts, some boxing fans, some boxing business people that probably want to see him back just to get that one back for boxing. You know what I mean? To have a more definitive result. So many options on the table for Francis Ngannou. But what you got to say is you got to be happy for that guy, man. Him and the people around him, they went all in on themselves. They took this opportunity that we all said, oh, man, I mean, he's got a puncher's chance, but to really get in there and outlast like a great boxer. Last week, when I saw the knockdown, I'm like, yep, that's the way he can do it. But then he continued to box well. He just proved that he belonged in there. It was a great performance. And that man has a ton of options on the table. And I think there's some big paychecks coming his way.
Now, again, disclaimer, we're not going to pretend that we are boxing experts. We're not. But what I am an expert is in schoolyard fights. I'm an expert in that. And in a schoolyard fight, when it's close, but one person drops the other one, guess who they say won the fight?
That guy.
The guy who dropped the other guy. That's all I'm going to say.
You're 100%, man. If that's pride rules right there, Francis Ngannou is walking away with a decision, right? If that's schoolyard rules, Francis Ngannou is walking away with the decision. So, yeah, man, he got the knockdown. I saw Tyson Fury say afterwards, look, it wasn't bad. He just kind of flashed me a little bit. And I think that's fair. He looked clear enough.
Flipped him on the temple. It was a check hook.
Yeah, but it did knock him down. It did put him on his butt. There's no question about it. That's a 10-8 round. We may not be boxing experts, but I know when you drop your opponent, that's 10-8. I mean, so no doubt there. He did it. And it was so cool, right? Because not only did he drop him, but then Francis kind of had that little dance after it, threw a little swagger.
The shimmy, that's uncharacteristic of Francis Ngannou.
It really was. And boy, I tell you what was fun to see was how much he kind of loosened up. Like after he got that knockdown, he had the little dance, but then just all of his movements, he was more fluid. He was more open. You could see the confidence he had. It was like, because look, you could see it, man. There were nerves, and understandably so. We talked about it.
Yeah,
even a guy
real stiff off the bat.
Yes, there were nerves going in there. And my goodness, I mean, we're not even talking about what a show this was. I mean, just maybe it didn't need to be 5 hours long or whatever, but man, I mean, just over the top, amazing. So there were bound to be some nerves, and you could see it, but he loosened up a little bit. Once he had that knockdown, I think that really is like, oh, wait a minute. All the things that we've been talking about, all the things I've been saying, like they're true. I do belong in here. And he really started to flow a little bit, and it looked amazing. I'm like, oh my goodness, this could get ugly. And then I think as time wore on, I think he started to fatigue a little bit. We said that too, right? Like no matter how great a shape you are and you've never been in a boxing match before, you haven't been through this. And he started to slow down a little bit. And ultimately, I think that's why he kind of let off the gas a little bit and probably let the decision slip away. But again, none of it matters. None of it matters, man. He is a winner. I mean, no moral victories? No. This was a huge moral victory, and
I'm not even going to say it's a moral victory. It's way beyond a moral victory. And I'm glad you brought up like loosening up. I noticed halfway through round number 1, he loosened up halfway through the first round. And I'm going to tell you exactly when. I actually went back and started watching clips again this morning to prepare for this. In the first big shot that Ngannou took was early, about midway through the first round. Tyson Fury threw out his jab, boom, came over the top and hit Francis Ngannou. And it didn't do anything to Ngannou. And I literally saw it right there. He kind of and he got a little bit looser and then started really walking him down more. I don't know. Was that just me?
No, 100%. Because look, again, it's all the unknown, right? It's all the question marks. Like, okay, you think you can box Tyson Fury, but you've never been in there with Tyson Fury. And that's what we all were saying it because it's true. You don't know. That's what was so intriguing about this is you don't know what's going to happen until you see it happen. There's question marks everywhere. And I 100% agree with you. I think he took a big shot and he was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm still here. And
wait,
then you
they
start
got
thinking,
10-ounce pads on this?
Yeah, I'm about to say, you're like, hold on. I've been getting hit by heavyweights with this 4-ounce gloves on. I mean, it's just covering the knuckles. Like, what is this? This is easy. I could do this all day, So, yeah, I think he absolutely loosened up a little bit. And again, once he had that big knock, it just goes to show you the power that he has. Tyson said, okay, it was a little bit of a glancing blow, but it still puts you on your butt, man. And it just goes to show the power that Francis brings in there, whether he's boxing, whether it's mixed martial arts, anything, man. Super
And I don't
exciting.
want to go out and say that it does prove the championship mindset that a Fury does have. He got off his butt. He came back. He rallied. He got the decision, whether you agree with it or not. I can go, truth be told, I can go either way on it because of inactivity, because of, I guess maybe the heart in me was going one way, but the mind in me may have been going out, and I think that does play into a lot of these analysts who come and say, you hear Ariel Helwani, he is like over the moon about a robbery, right? This isn't a robbery. It was a close fight, right?
Yep. I thought it was.
But a lot of these pundits were very attached to this.
Yeah, and listen, I think two things can be true simultaneously, which is I don't think Tyson Fury had his best night. And I hate to maybe say that because it's like that sounds like we're taking away from Francis Ngannou, but I feel like both cases can be simultaneously true. And I think people are a little hesitant to say that, whether it's because Tyson Fury didn't take it as seriously as he should have, whether he just had a bad night, right? Like you can just have
he claimed his timing was off. It's a real thing. I don't necessarily, it looked like in that first round, that timing was pretty good. But
yeah, you never know. It just, to me, it didn't look like the best we've ever seen Tyson Fury. But I say that because I'm just being honest. But I don't want to take it away. That doesn't mean that. Well, Francis really didn't perform that well. No, Francis performed incredibly well, and I thought this was fantastic. And you do have to give Tyson Fury some credit, right? Because he could have packed it up. You know what I mean? I always say a real mark of a champion to me isn't really domination. It's finding a way to get through when you don't have your best stuff, right? When you're not having your best night. The one that always stands out to me and much more dramatic, but John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, the first fight, right? Where you knew John Jones wasn't having his best night, but somehow he found a way to dig through there and win that fight. Now that was an epic classic UFC title fight. Unfortunately that the title wasn't on the line here. It wasn't an exhibition. They did change that. It did count, but certainly didn't have the belt on the line. But yeah, no, listen, I think Tyson Fury should.
Well, it had the World Boxing. What was the belt that they made up?
They just make stuff up all the time. It's ridiculous. It's the Riyadh.
I'm telling you, Saudi's getting in the game in a lot of stuff. They're throwing money everywhere, and a lot of people hate it. But if they're going to bring sideshow spectacles and things of this, man, look what they did in golf. They've had the PGA up their game. If they're going to have boxing up their game like this, I'm still here for it.
It's unbelievable, right? Because you look at that event, there's no way they made money on that event, but they don't care, right? They're not running it like a business where it's got to be profitable, and they've got to. At the end of the day, we got to sell more pay-per-views and tickets than we spend. It's
that didn't happen. Well, it may have happened,
there's no way. I mean, dude, how many pay-per-views do they have to sell to pay? I mean, do you see that? I mean, they built a venue for it. You know what I mean? They got concerts going on.
And my guess is all those stars, they flew them in.
100%. They flew them in. They probably gave them appearance fees to be there. You know what I mean? Look, not that there wasn't fan interest in this, but listen, they brought in a ton of people. That wasn't a couple of people that showed up that were interested in being there. I mean, they had everybody there, a who's who. So yeah, I mean, they just laid out the money. And look, if they're going to keep doing this, it's really interesting to see, right? You got a PFL event that's probably coming up there. Early next year. It looks like maybe a pay-per-view will be out there potentially. We know the UFC is committed to going out there as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see, how much they want to keep spending money. Because at some point, I mean, everything I've ever been told is, look, understand the Saudis basically have unlimited money. Like the resources essentially, like you can't understand. They don't end. But at some point, I mean, can you lose money on every single event big and be happy about it? I don't know. So I'm kind of intrigued to see where this goes, but man, they sure knew how to go over the top, man. This event was wild.
Are you a fan of White Man Can't Jump? Have you ever seen that movie?
Oh, yeah, it's been a while, but I mean, that was a classic back in the day.
That's like one of my favorite movies of all time. And Gloria, the female character, the girlfriend, in it, she has this real famous quote in there. And she says, sometimes when you win, you really lose. And sometimes when you lose, you really win. And sometimes when you win or lose, you really tie. Winning or losing is all one organic mechanism, which one extracts what they need.
That's a great quote. I had totally forgotten about that quote, but as soon as you started mentioning it, I can hear it in her voice as well. You know what I mean? That is a classic.
So Francis lost, but he really won.
Yep.
Fury won. It's debated whether he really lost in what this means for his future, things of that nature, or he tied. Who really won? And now listen, I want to put, this is my opinion of my winners and my losers here. Okay. Because this is such a unique situation that we just watched unfold, because the ripples of this is not to boxing or just to MMA. They're so intertwined now to a degree. Okay.
Right.
So here are my winners. Obviously, Francis Ngannou is number one, heads and tails, the winner of it all in
100%,
a loss.
100%.
Number two, I still put Fury as a winner in this, right? He still won. He got a payday. He sets up what he wants to do. He's got a monster payday with Francis Ngannou looming if that Usyk fight doesn't happen. And I'm going to put Fury in my losers too. So he's weird. He's in both. Okay. MMA won because we feel like we got one back. Boxing definitely won. There's so many eyes on boxing and talking about boxing, and the fans won in this. Now, not to contradict myself, I want to give you my losers as well. Fury and his next opponent lost. That was a monumental fight coming up that had been signed prior to this. In the buildup to this fight, Fury already signed his next opponent. That's a big loss. You know, as Eddie Hearns, a big boxing promoter, said, that's a dead fight now. It's a dead fight now, right? In my opinion, the PFL lost in all this. Ooh. And I'm going to tell you why. Everybody's like, PFL, this, that, and the other. When is the next time you think Francis Ngannou is getting into an MMA cage?
That remains to be seen, because you're 100% right about that. I know that PFL executives, before we jumped on here, I was actually in conversation with some PFL executives who are on their way back right now from Saudi Arabia, and I'll be talking to them later this week. But you're right, Eric. That is something worth considering, because if he steps into a PFL smart cage next, that was a big win for them. If he doesn't, and he's got boxing, maybe one, maybe two, who knows how many fights, and doesn't come, then that ends up being a big loss for them. So that one is in my remains to be seen category.
Okay. The UFC lost in this, in my opinion. They let, because Dana White famously went on the record, which I think we all agreed with. It wasn't a hot take or an outlandish take when Dana White goes and said, this is crazy. It's like, this isn't going to be a Mayweather, McGregor style-esque event. It's not going to be this. It's not going to be that. There's no legitimacy to this. Wrong. So in that, mind frame, the UFC lost in it. And truth be told, even though us as fans won in the event, I truly believe us as fans, specifically MMA fans, lost in it. We may have gotten one back, or more, kind of got one back. But if we want to see the Predator in a cage, economically, it is not the wise thing for Francis Ngannou to do. And I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
It's interesting, man. You lay out so many interesting points in the fall of this, and you're right. And you hit the nail on the head in terms of like the biggest loser of this, and I think it's Alexander Usyk in this, man. I mean, that fight was lined up with Usyk. Who cares now? You know what I mean? Like, if Usyk beats Tyson Fury, so what, right? People just go, yeah, dude. You mean the Tyson Fury that could barely even hang with the MMA guy? You beat him? Who cares? Big deal, right? And it's interesting that you say Tyson Fury is a winner, because you're right. I think his legacy, his reputation is down right now, right? It's absolutely down right now. There's people that are going to be taking shots at Tyson Fury, understandably so. But the interest in a rematch, massive. Like, they're going to want to do this again. I'm sure Tyson's going to want to do this again. Things got delayed, right? I mean, it's already come out. That fight that was supposed to happen in December 3rd with Fury and Usyk is not happening December 23rd. They hope it'll be next year. But now you start wondering, well, does that mean that Ngannou comes in? So really, really interesting scenarios into how all that plays out. It is, and right, man.
It can be legitimate if they do a rematch, because the WBC already said they're going to put them in their top 10.
I think, dude, I mean, what does more at the box office right now? It's the rematch. There's no question about it. It's the real. Where will there be more interest? It's the rematch. Can Tyson get it right? Did he maybe admit that he didn't take it quite as seriously as he should have? Does he have a lot more respect? But then again, I mean, how much better will Francis be with the confidence that he has now? It's no longer the unknown. Now you know what it feels like in there. Now you know what adjustments you need to make and what things you can tweak to make yourself better. So, yeah, the rematch is huge. Fans, you're right, man. It's a shame. It's funny because I will say the McGregor-Mayweather comparison was tough, right? Because those were cultural icons and are cultural icons, right? So when they came together, it was, I think, a bigger event than this. But I also don't think that Dana factored in when he made that assessment that he didn't realize that he was going to have the Saudis involved and their unlimited resources that will make this thing. I mean, they ended up making that more of an over-the-top event than Mayweather-McGregor was. I don't think it had the same fan interest behind it. I don't think it'll have the same pay-per-view sales.
Didn't have the same build-up. It didn't. Yeah, there wasn't 27 press conferences across 7 continents.
The world. Yeah, exactly. So it didn't have that. But man, at the end of the day, the event itself was, I think, bigger, man. It was definitely, I mean, it was, the T-Mobile Arena is fantastic, but it's not that. And there weren't concerts and there weren't the unending list of celebrities in attendance. So they made it a bigger deal. So it's unique, man. I do wish that Dana White had been able to say, you know what, let's make this one happen as well. I know there was frustrations, right? You know, a lot of people like to use that quote that Dana said that, you know, Francis doesn't really want to take risks. And I think they misinterpret what Dana meant by that, because I don't think he meant that he's not willing to take risk in terms of who he fights. He's willing to fight anybody. That he wasn't willing to take risks in terms of he wanted guaranteed paydays up front, right? And that's not how the UFC does business. They say, we'll pay you some money up front, but at the end of the day, you're a business partner with us and you make your money on the back end. And those were the risks that Dana was saying Francis wasn't willing to take, in that, hey, you get your money on the back end because we're business partners together. But I do wish they would have been able to find a way to do this one. And I get it. It's hard from the UFC perspective, right? Because they don't want to do this all the time. They did it once, but like, their core business is making UFC fights, not helping their guys go box elsewhere. So I understand the limitations, but you're so right.
And Pandora's box, once it gets open like that,
it's exactly, everybody's going to want to do. You could already see it on social media. There's so many, you know, UFC fighters that were so inspired by what they saw with Francis, and not even about the payday, but just about the fact of taking the challenge and going and do this and being the center of the combat sports world, that they're now like, I want to do that too. I want to find a way to do that. I wish the UFC would have found a way to do it, because, and I mean this is no shot at the PFL, because I love what they're doing. I'm a fan of what the PFL is doing. But I don't know what the most intriguing fight is for Francis Ngannou in the PFL Smart Cage. We've talked about that, right? Who do you want to see him fight?
Hence the reason I put them as a loser. I mean, listen, that's a hot take. I understand that PFL is a loser in this, because they were the ones who said, hey, come over here. We'll pay you a lot of money. They got the shine. They got the this. They got the that from it. Do you put the PFL as a winner or a loser in this?
I mean, it depends
it's
on
hard.
what.
I get it. Really, it's hard. You cover them. There's a fine line you got to walk. I guess the better question I have to ask is, do we see Francis in a PFL cage within the next 24 months?
Well, that's it. That's where 24 months, I think we do. I think we definitely do within the next 2 years. But you're right. That's why it's hard to classify who's a winner and loser, or where the PFL stands. Because if Francis' next fight is in the PFL Smart Cage, or whoever against it may be, then I think that it gets eyeballs, it gets interest. People are going to be talking about it, right? Just the headline, even if it doesn't necessarily generate pay-per-view buys, because he's definitely going to be on their pay-per-view. Just the headlines it'll get, the amount of people that'll be talking about it, that'll be a win for the PFL. Now, in terms of, you know, like you said, from a fan perspective, boy, wouldn't it be great if Francis' next fight was against John Jones? Wouldn't it be great if Francis' next opponent was against Stipe Miocic, or you know what I mean? There's those matchups. So that's a little bit frustrating, because I don't think there's a fight in the PFL that we're like, gotta see that, gotta clamor for that. But, if Francis' next fight is somebody else in the heavyweight boxing division, right? Whoever it may be, if it's another fight out there, and then you still have the rematch looming on the horizon as well, because I don't see any way that these two don't fight again, right? Tyson Fury is going to want to have this fight again. I don't see any way they don't do it. So yeah, if all of a sudden Francis is fighting 2-3 boxing matches and doesn't come to the PFL next and isn't in the PFL next, then they absolutely lose in this. So
that's why I put the 24-month over under, because listen, I'm a businessman, right? I own gyms, operate gyms. I've got a number of businesses that I run. If I'm going to look at it from a strictly business perspective, okay, what do? There's a few scenarios, and boxing is every single one of them, okay? Because you have a Fury rematch, which would do monster numbers, right?
Right.
But let's just say Fury is 100% obligated to fighting Usyk next, which it may or may not. I don't know if there's clauses in there and whatever, maybe. But let's just say he is. Then I see a path where if I was advising Ngannou, I wouldn't say, don't go fight Joshua. Don't go fight another guy that's a huge risk. Go get another massive payday in the sport of boxing that does this all the time, that we're going to get a massive payday with somebody that we think that we can win handily, but has enough of a reputation, doesn't look like a step back. And then that just builds another monster showdown with Fury again. Yeah. That's not any of these scenarios isn't a 6-month scenario. It's not even a year scenario. That's why I put that 24-month over under there. I really think at best we see, if Ngannou ever comes back to fighting MMA, ever. I put it at 24 months.
See, it's interesting, right? Because, all right, I look at the rematch with Tyson Fury kind of almost the way I look at Conor and Nate 3, right? It's in your back pocket. It doesn't matter what happens between now and then. That fight is going to draw numbers regardless, right? I've always said it, and I believe it. Conor could lose 10 fights in a row. Nate could lose 10 fights in a row. You put them together for the trilogy fight, it's getting 1 million pay-per-view buys because we all want to see it, right? I think everybody is going to want to see this rematch no matter what. Tyson Fury is going to want to see it. They're going to want it no matter what. But I do wonder, would you be better served if you're Francis Ngannou to go do MMA next? Because I don't know, if you go box next and it doesn't go your way, like what if it's, I mean, obviously this was a loss, but as we say, it's not really a loss. It's a victory. But what if you go out in your next one and it doesn't go your way? And maybe you do get clipped, or maybe you lose a one-sided decision against whoever that next opponent is. Does the interest in the rematch go away with Tyson Fury? I don't think so.
But you have MMA in your back pocket at all times. And that's why I said that. Like, MMA is, to me, is his fallback. If you're Francis Ngannou, you're getting that 25, 50, maybe $100 million payday now. MMA just isn't there yet. As much as I want it to be, it's not there yet. So do you go and risk a fight in the PFL with a fully reconstructed knee, somebody diving at takedowns, you sprawling and brawling? There's just so much more risk entering a cage. Now, if we could set up some sort of cross promotion in a weird way, it is possible. If you listen to Francis Ngannou talk, it is possible. The UFC would have to be on board, but that is not possible. But in a theoretical situation,
in theory, it's possible, but like we all know,
it's possible. The only other way to go back to MMA at this point, or in the near future, is if you have a John Jones setup fight. That's the only way. And in that scenario, if that were ever to come to be, now those guys are making, boxing money. Big time boxing monies for that fight. That's the only scenario he goes back to MMA, in my opinion. So the next 1, 2, 3 fights are all going to be boxing. And let's just say 2 for sure. There's 2 boxing matches for sure before he ever thinks about MMA. And that's just from a pure dollars and cents perspective.
It's interesting, right? Because I think you lay out the scenario perfect. And you're right. And when you talk about the wear and tear of a mixed martial arts fight versus a boxing fight, it's not even really the fight itself, right? It's the preparation. It's all the wrestling and grappling that you have to do. We've talked about that before, but that's where the most injuries occurs when you're trying to get that. When you're talking about knee injuries, the one caveat that I do find interesting in this, and it's why I'm looking forward to talking to PFL officials when they get back in town later this week, is that, remember, Saudi government is invested in the PFL as well, right? The PFL is going to start a regional league over there, the MENA League, the Middle East, Northern Africa. They're going to have that where they have PFL Europe now. That's going to happen at some time in 2024. I think they're trying to do a live event over there at some point. They do want to do a pay-per-view at some point. So does maybe the Saudi government, want to see? I mean, obviously, Francis Ngannou, his stock is riding higher than it's ever been. They just had this amazing event. They were just the center of the sporting world. Did they go to the PFL? Hey, let's get your guy back over here. For our first fight that we do over here at the PFL, let's get your guy in here. And you know what? We'll hand select the opponent. Find us a guy that's only going to strike. Find us a guy that's not going to shoot on him and try to grapple with him. So that's probably the only scenario. Because you're right. The only way he's making that kind of money that he made this past weekend is if it's John Jones, maybe Stipe, but John Jones for sure, right? At that point, now we're talking about like Conor and Habib type interest, right? Where there's so much talk about it that you get real
on the heels
money.
Of that, I think that fight would be even more
massive. It'd be huge. You know what I mean? And but again, we know that's not happening. As we said, theoretically it's possible. But if we're going to talk about it, look, let's just be honest. If you're not super familiar with it, the UFC doesn't cross promote. They don't believe they need to, and financially they don't. They're the biggest power in the game. So what they see no benefit in cross promotion, and I don't think as long as Dana White is there that they will do that. So I don't see that fight happening. I think the only scenario in which mixed martial arts is next is if it's a PFL event in Saudi Arabia and the business partners that are working together say, hey, let's do that. Let's do another big one over here and let's make that happen. But if you're advising them, if you're part of that team, I think you're right in talking about why boxing matters more. And it is going to be, man, the fallout of that to see what the boxing world and how, because as you said, it's not in the UFC, right? They can just make whatever matchups they want. Mixed martial arts as a whole, you can just make whatever matchups you want if that's the one. In boxing, you kind of touched on it. there's clauses, there's mandatory defense contracts. There's, well, no, you have to fight this guy next, or otherwise you got to give up the title. But boy, in everybody's best interest, I think, to make this fight now, right? I mean,
well, and I read in that Fury versus Usyk. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
Usyk. That there's a rematch clause in there already.
So now you got to do 2 fights?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I don't know, like, if we're from a Fury Usyk, it like Hearn already said it's a dead fight. I think it is a dead fight, right? The interest isn't there.
Usyk's the biggest loser. Usyk's the biggest loser by far in this whole situation.
Let me add that to the list.
Yeah, the biggest loser.
Yeah. So it's anxious. I'm interested to see what comes of this, and I think we'll get some clarity in the next 3 months, right? But MMA, I'm an MMA fan. I won Saturday afternoon, early evening. I lost today when I really sit down and think about it. It's just the reality of the situation.
It's a great point, man. It's such a great point. You're so right. Ideally here, what I would love to see, I would love to see Francis come back, do his next fight in mixed martial arts, do it in the PFL Smart Cage at their pay-per-view. I'm just going to say it, hand-selected opponent, somebody that's just going to throw with you, you know what I mean? Do that, and then go have the rematch with Tyson Fury. But you're right. There's so many variables in this, right? And it's not just, one organization that has to find it, right? I mean, I agree. I think there's less interest right now in the Usyk fight than there ever was. But do all the powers that be in boxing, do they understand that and accept that and go along with that? I don't know. We're going to see.
What I think is undeniable is the superstar that Francis Ngannou, if he wasn't one, which I don't think he was a superstar. He was, the people who knew his backstory, he was a star, not only like he's the scariest mother effer on the planet, right? But now he is in my opinion, he is just going to be a global superstar. I think he is going to be, on the Khabib level worldwide.
Oh, undeniably, right? I mean, what does he mean to a continent right now? I mean, what a hero. His story is incredible, and I think they did a great job of telling the story and the backstory for people that didn't know. If you're a hardcore MMA fan, maybe you're like, yeah, come on, we all know this. But remember, there was a whole bunch of people watching that guy that had no idea where he came from, and his story, from the sand mines to homelessness to UFC champion. I mean, it's unbelievable. How cool was it, by the way?
Dropped in the Sahara or into the what desert was it? 6 different times, left to rot and die.
And just continued forward, man. Unbelievable. So you're right. I think he means a lot to a lot of people around the world. I was gonna say, how cool is it to see Adesanya and Usman there, right? I mean, I know they had
3 kings.
You had a lot of stars there overall, but to have them be part of the walkout, to have them as like just involved in, not just as, hey, here's some celebrities in attendance, but to have the 3 kings back together, man. I thought that was a super cool moment, a super cool little tip of the cap to those 3 guys as well, man.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So, we could sit and talk about this all day, the fallout, this, that, and the other. I think we did a good job of kind of laying out what the next 3 to 6 months, what we should be looking for. But we're an MMA podcast. Let's get to some MMA finally, only 30 minutes in.
Hey, we will not be talking about a lot of boxing over the course of this show, but when it's something like this, you can't deny it, involving one of our own.
All right. So we talked a lot about Chimaev last week. The potential injury, this, that, and the other. Now, I got to say, somebody in the comments, I wish it had it in front of me, said, you guys are doing a great job, but Eric mispronouncing Khamzat's name over and over again just drives me crazy. John, you are you're the best. I thought I was saying it correctly. How do I say his name correctly?
You say it like a hazmat suit. It's Khamzat. Khamzat. Put the M before the Z.
Khamzat.
There you go. Boom.
Khamzat.
Got it.
All right, man. So, hey, listen.
Mark Fellows, we got him fixed up for you. We
read the comments. Thank you. My bad. Snap, dude. Got drinking the haterades out there. But no, listen. Hams. Oh, gosh.
That's why I never wanted to correct you, because I knew I threw you. Khamzat Chimaev.
Khamzat. All right. Khamzat Chimaev does not break his hand, as earlier reported. He does, however, tear a ligament. Now, I would assume that's better. No surgery looks to be required, which is always great. Ligaments are tricky. They're saying the timetable is only 1 month. That seems a little sketchy on me, but what are we really looking at here?
I mean, I'm interested to see that because obviously saw the same reports you did, and it seemed like everybody's like, "Hey, it's only a ligament." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, aren't ligaments like notoriously tricky? Don't they sometimes not heal the way they're supposed to, and they cause lingering issues?" I mean, the good is it's not a break. So if it's not a break, then you don't have to wait for the bones to fuse. And I guess you can fight with a bad ligament, right? Like, I mean, you could tear your ACL and technically go out there and fight if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not.
Don't recommend it, but
not recommended in the least, but you can. So. I think that's a good thing. I think what it feels, at least from the energy around it, everybody feeling like it's a good thing, and he's going to be back sooner rather than later. And I think that what, unfortunately, is probably Dricus du Plessis is the one that's seeing those reports and going, "Oh, come on," because to be honest with you, I thought the UFC was going to kind of have their hand forced into making the matchup that I think is the most deserving matchup right now at middleweight, and that's Dricus du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. That's the fight I believe should be made right now. Now I get it. Khamzat Chimaev, superstar. I think he's got more global star power than Dricus du Plessis. And no disrespect there, but he's just, sometimes there's that X factor, right? You can't put your finger on why somebody has it and somebody else doesn't. But Khamzat has that, right? So I get it. From a business perspective, Khamzat probably draws more interest. The pre-fight banter will be more interesting. He'll talk all kinds of trash, and Sean Strickland, obviously, he'll be Sean Strickland, and it'll be wild. So it sounds like, as far as what this all means, based on what we're hearing, and again, while I'll say I'm not a boxing expert, I'm also not a medical expert as well. A ligament to me doesn't sound like a free checklist of like, "Oh, sweet, he's good to go." But the energy around it feels like everybody's like, "Yeah, he'll be back sooner rather than later." And if he is back sooner rather than later, that means he's going to get that title shot. The UFC is going to go in with Khamzat Chimaev to get him that title shot. And I'm happy for him. I mean, the guy's a star. He clearly looks all the part of future champion, so he deserves that opportunity. But I just still wonder what you do with Dricus du Plessis out there, because I just feel like DDP kind of earned the shot, man. I think it's a bummer that he's not getting it right now.
I'm just not as optimistic about this. I just really am not. Okay, so a month seems very generous. Like, it's like always, like, I've never heard a fighter or a representative put out worst case scenario.
True.
I've always heard him put out best case scenario, 3 to 6 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. It ends up being 6 weeks, ends up being 2 months. Now, what they conveniently doesn't say is this out from 100% training, or then do we have to ease them in to hitting the bag? Then do we have to ease them into this? So there's a lot there that is left unsaid. And that's why I'm just not confident in that 1 month, because 1 month is so damn subjective. Yeah, he could be going out there and shadow boxing in a month. Is he hitting a heavy bag? Oh, he's hitting a heavy bag lightly in a month. Is he hitting another human skull in a month?
I love what you're saying, because I think you're spot on with it. And again, it feels so bad, because I feel like Dricus deserves a shot, but for him to get it, it's like I have to be wishing injury upon someone, and I'm not. You know what I mean? But I think you're right in what you're saying, because okay, a month is all it takes, but wait, a month, and then does he need some it's healed after a month, and then he needs to rehab it? Because like we saw how kind of ineffective he was late in that fight, right? And he said afterwards, "Yeah, I messed up my hand in the first round. I wasn't able to wrestle the rest of the fight." And that made a huge change in his fight with Usman. So, 4 weeks and he's 100%, he's good to go. Like, he can book a fight 5 weeks from now. Like, we can put him on the Vegas card at the end of the year. Like, or no, there's going to be some rehab ahead of it. Like you said, there's a lot of scenarios between, not being totally injured and also being healthy enough and ready to go to take a fight. So I like what you're saying, because I kind of feel the same way, that to me, it feels like there's still question marks around it. But if he is good, and these things do hold true, and he's ready, I think he's getting the next title shot.
I just want to throw this out there. In his next fight and or in training, what does he need to use the most?
Wrestling.
Or like to grab stuff, to hit stuff. What does he need to use? Like, what's his biggest tool that he needs to use in a fight?
His hands.
His hands. That's why I just don't think a month is like, oh, we're going full throttle, no holds barred, no limitations, no nothing in a month. I just don't. I mean, I guess I buy the optimism, because there's always the optimism. right?
Right.
It could have already, was it a complete tear? Was it, he tore it? What does that mean? Like, there's still a lot of unknowns out there. If it's a complete tear, then I don't understand why a surgery wasn't there, because it would have had to be. So it's obviously probably not a complete tear. It's a partial tear. Has it already started fusing it? I don't know. I'm no medical expert, but I have busted my hands. I got 9 screws in a plate right there. You guys can't see the scar. This sucker has never been the same, ever. Right? I can't close my fist all the way like I used to. It hurts when I hit stuff. And I should have done physical therapy a lot better when it happened. And in that case, I wanted to get back to grappling again. I wanted to get back to everything. I'm like, screw it. My hand feels fine. I'm not going to, that poses problems. So if he's going to do any physical therapy on it, if he's going to do any of this, guess what? It's longer than a month.
Yeah. And you bring a lot of really great points there, right? Because if you're in the Khamzat Chimaev camp, right, the last thing you want to do is let anything that, like, you don't want the UFC to have any doubt whatsoever, right? So all the reports you're putting out there, oh, my guy's going to be good in like a month, man, like 100%. Like, you don't want to give the UFC any reason
Right.
to doubt or to delay things, because we know how that happens, right? But, if you're in the Khamzat Chimaev camp and you're advising them, you probably want to tell them as well, hey, look, man, if we're being honest, you've already earned your title shot. They're going to give you a title shot. But do you want to go win a title and have this thing not be 100%, and now you can't get out there and defend it? Because that's where the money comes, right? I mean, it's nice to get that contract and get your title
once
fight.
you get them points.
That's when you get those pay-per-view points. That's where the real revenue comes in. So I would want to tell my guy, hey, Khamzat, let's make sure you're 100%. I know how hungry you are. I know what you want to do. I know you want to go get this title fight. But the title fight's sitting there for you, my man. It's there for you. Let's heal this hand up. Let's make sure you're 100% so that when you come back, not only are you ready to go win that title, but you're ready to go rack up some defenses right after that as well, because that's where your big bucks are going to come in. So I get it. I understand if you see that title shot, you see that gold belt, it's right out there on the horizon. You're like, nothing's going to stop me. I got to go get this right now. But he's in a unique position where I don't think the UFC is going to take that away, right? Because Dana always says, don't turn down title shots. It's why he got mad at Dricus du Plessis, right? Dricus wouldn't take the title fight on short notice because he wasn't healthy, and Dana and the UFC brass are kind of punishing him now because of that. I understand you don't want to turn down, but I feel like Khamzat has earned himself a unique situation, right? Maybe he's got a little Dana White privilege or whatever it may be, but I feel like if he said, look, man, I want to go so bad, but I can't, I could see them going, don't worry, hang tight. We'll get you the next one after that. So it's going to be interesting the way this plays out.
You brought this up, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, talking about another fight of saying, hey, yeah, you are next. We're just going to do this one first.
Yeah.
That's the scenario I see here. That's the smart play, right? DDP is next. Then you got Khamzat. Khamzat waiting in the wings. Man, that boogeyman waiting in the wings, that's a hell of a boogeyman hanging over everybody's head.
I'm telling you, man, that to me, that is the scenario I would love to see, to be honest. I think that's the exact scenario it should go in. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's the way it's going to play out if this hand is healthy at all. But to me, that's the way the division should shake out. So we'll see how it plays out.
Conor McGregor was in Saudi Arabia this past weekend. And I got to say, he does look structurally a little bit different. His hair looked good. He looked good. He looked healthy. He was talking great. Like,
Beard's gone.
Like, I'm telling you, I was very encouraged by the Conor McGregor that I saw this past weekend. I came in, when Conor McGregor, I started watching Conor McGregor Cage Warriors, right?
Yep.
Then, through his early UFC just meteoric rise, I had always been a Conor McGregor fan, and then the antics started coming and you're just like, you just hate to see that. Visually, and from the way he was talking this past weekend, he looks like a completely different guy. Did I read that correctly, you think?
No, 100%. I think his head's in the right spot. I think being around just a massive event like that boxing match was probably got him fired up, to realize, hey, what can I do? Because I agree with you, man. I mean, look, the Khabib fight was dark, right? I mean, the build up to that one was dark. I remember thinking when that fight, I was like, and I remember vividly thinking, I just can't wait for this fight week to be over, man. Like, I don't even want to cover this. I mean, obviously excited about the fight itself, but all the stuff around it was dark, right? And then he came back and it was the Cowboy fight, and it was like, all right, the weight is off. Now it's kind of a jovial guy and into the spirit. And that was great. And then you got to the Poirier matchups, which started to get a little dark again. And
in the meantime, you had the broken phone in New York. You had the punching the old guy in the bar. You had the allegations of XYZ, right? All intertwined after that dark period. So it was still this cloud hanging over. But to this point right now, any allegations, which we said, like from afar, this Miami Heat story, it looked like those allegations fell on their face very early, right? That's completely out of the way. He looks healthy. He looks rejuvenated. And I think, and when I say healthy, he seems mentally healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's in a good spot, at least just judging from what we saw. I mean, it feels like he's in a good spot, and having a Conor McGregor that's in a good headspace is good for the sport. It's good for fans. He's the biggest star in the sport's history. There's absolutely no question about it. So when he's involved in something, the world stands up and takes notice of it, regardless of where his ranking is, regardless of whether or not you think he can win a title right now. It's like people don't care. They just want to see the guy fight. And when he's got the quick wit going on, and when he's having the snappy one-liners, and it's not so much about the dark side of things, but it's about him just being the entertaining guy that he has, the type of just energy that he brings to the table. It's unmatched, man. And fight fans love it. We love it as MMA fans. So I agree. From what I saw of Conor McGregor in Saudi Arabia, I was encouraged as well, man. It seemed like a guy that's in the right space. That's that is. Oh, by the way, now back in the USADA testing pool, that is starting to get those 6 months
so far.
Yes, sir. Trying to get those things knocked out already, and he's got to go 6 months, and eyeing April, which we haven't seen the 2024 schedule yet, but you just do the math. Sure looks like that's right about the time UFC 300 might be happening, bro.
I don't know. Nostradamus Morgan already claimed that, but yes, to your point, he gives the timeline. He says he wishes it was prior, but it's looking like it's going to be April. And people asked him, well, is it Chandler? And he goes, yeah, whoever. But yes, it is looking like it's Chandler. Okay, he was almost dismissive of Chandler a little bit, but saying that's the name that is being floated to me. Yes, it's Chandler.
And that's a fight Chandler wants, right? He understands. Man, it's a fight that he's been chasing.
And Chandler's going to win.
It's a legacy fight. Yeah. Why would you take another fight right now? You know what I mean? That's the fight to wait for. It's a money fight. It's a legacy fight. It's an attention fight, man. It puts you right in the spotlight of the world stage. That's the one to do it. And I mean, we already laid it out, but we're just going to reiterate it. Just, book it for UFC 300. That's when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, because you said it's a money fight and it's a legacy fight for Chandler. And I've never understood how this really, really works. I know Conor gets to call his own shots, and regardless if he's champion or not, he's probably getting points, and he's probably, and he's getting huge guarantees. But from a Michael Chandler perspective, and a lot of these people who are wanting to fight Conor because it's a money fight for them, but yet they're under a contract of already a set amount. How does that work? Why is it a money fight for Chandler if he's already contracted at, say, 150 and 150?
Well, you're right about that. That's a great point to bring up. It's only a money fight if you go to the bargaining table and say, in order for me to do this, I need you to pay me this amount of money. Because you're right. You're under a contract, and they can just be like, look, this is the fight. Take it or leave it. And if you turn it down, now they can extend your contract because, you turned down a fight that they offered to you. But normally in a situation like that, especially, Michael Chandler's a smart businessman. I think when they first came to the table and it's like, hey, man, we want you to do the Ultimate Fighter. We want you to do this, and then we'll fight afterwards. At that point, you got to sit down and say, okay, cool, but we know what this fight is. You know what it is. You know what kind of attention it's going to bring. You know what kind of revenue it's going to bring. I know I'm under this contract, but I'm going to need you to bump it up a little bit for me to take this. And I think if you do it in a smart way and just show, look, here's what it'll generate for you. I want to be a part of it. Then you can get a new contract, and you can even get a stipulation that it's it's just for that bout. You don't get paid this every time you fight, but you get paid it. So it's all about what you can negotiate, man. You just got to come to the table, and you got to realize, what you should be making for a fight of that magnitude. Now, it's totally different because you touched on it earlier with championships. Like if there's a title on the line or you're a champion that's when you share in pay-per-view revenue, and that's where the big money comes in. You might not be able to get points. Maybe you can. Maybe you negotiate for this one fight. I want to get pay-per-view points. And the UFC says, okay, maybe we do that. Maybe. But at the very least, you got to go ask for it, because you're right. If you just accept the fight and you don't go ask for a new contract, it's not a money fight, except in terms of like getting sponsors and revenue and things like that, where you go, hey, I'm going to be in the center of the world right now. I'm facing Conor McGregor. What do you want your brand to be associated with me? What can you pay for that? So there's opportunities outside of the cage as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just always struck me because everybody's like the money fight, Conor McGregor, and even when it's not a title, Justin Poirier made a lot of money. So he must have parlayed new contracts into that or one-off deals, which is interesting to hear that, you can secondary negotiate on a one-off deal just for that. And then maybe the normal contract picks back up.
Absolutely. You just got to go back in there and say, here's what we do for this one. You know what I mean? And, Hunter Campbell, Dana White, they get it, man. As much heat as they take for what they do, they also understand what's realistic when it comes to terms of business. And they understand, it's like, all right, well, why should you get this? Explain to me. Okay. All right. Well, let's do that.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right, looking forward this weekend from Sao Paulo, Brazil, UFC Fight Night 231. Jailton Almeida, 19-2, takes on the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis. Odds are what?
Oh my gosh, it's insane, man. I was looking at it before we got on, and I see on UFC.com. So normally I like to pull up best fight odds and see a bunch of different houses, but I just happen to be looking at the card itself. And on UFC.com, they had Jailton Almeida at minus 470. Derrick Lewis coming back at plus 360. Wow.
Makes sense, though, right? Because, listen, Derrick Lewis has one path to victory. We all know it, even though he is the best that's ever done it in that heavyweight division. But that is knockout. But Jailton Almeida, he's got 12 submissions in his 19 victories, and this guy has not lost in nearly 5 years.
The guy looks very much like the real deal. Jailton Almeida, this Brazilian that is just on this run, as you said, man, thought that maybe he was going to be a light heavyweight. Then he moves to heavyweight and has some real success. And at first I thought, well, maybe this is just a, kind of a one-off, or this isn't where he belongs. He looks like he belongs in the heavyweight division. He's incredibly athletic. He's got great grappling, as you said. And that's just a tough stylistic matchup for Derrick Lewis, unfortunately. Derrick Lewis he
subbed Rosenstruck.
That's it, man. Look, Derrick Lewis has that one-shot power, so, he can absolutely catch him. He absolutely can. But Jailton is – the thing is about his grappling is it's not this kind of slow grappling. It's very, very aggressive and quick. And so that makes it even tougher to time that big shot. So he can. And look, Derrick Lewis, a fan favorite. Who's not going to be, cheering for Derrick Lewis to have a moment, man? He's as fun as they get. But it's a tough stylistic match. And you know what? Derrick deserves credit for stepping in here, right? Because this was supposed to be Curtis Blades. Curtis Blades was out, and Derrick Lewis steps in on short notice to take this fight.
Maybe that negotiation happened there, too.
I was about to say, I bet he got a phone call, and he's like, it's funny. I wasn't really thinking about fighting. I got a lot going on right now. Oh, what's that? A new contract with a little extra money? All right, we'll show up. Put me down on a flight to Brazil.
Yeah, didn't Derrick Lewis just get a sponsorship with Manscaped because his balls have been hot?
Balls is hot. I mean, that's a natural fit, man. Manscaped, they did a great job from them.
Oh my gosh. But with the fan favorite that Derrick Lewis is and how rabid the Brazil crowd is for their own, I still don't see Derrick Lewis getting booed in Brazil. I just don't. This is going to be weird. I'm anxious. That was the first thing that I'm like, Brazil. Now, Curtis Blades would have been booed out the building, and they would have been chanting the, kill him chant, right? I don't know if they're going to do that to Derrick Lewis because everybody loves this guy.
Yeah, if they do, if they're yelling "Uva Moreira," it'll probably be with a big smile on their face, right? Because how do you hate on Derrick Lewis? But you're right. You make a great point because, I bet the Brazilian fans, the people that are the ticket buyers down there, I bet they're happier about this matchup. Even though I thought the Curtis Blades test, I wish I didn't see odds when it was Curtis Blades, but I got to imagine they were much closer than that, right? Because
it wasn't 470.
No, this was going to be a great matchup for Jailton Almeida, and this was going to be a good test. So in terms of rankings, or in terms of what this means for Jailton Almeida moving forward, this may mean less. But I got to think as a fan, they're just so excited to see Derrick Lewis down there. It's this real balance we talk about, right? When the UFC builds these cards as they travel around the world, these fans, yes, they want to see their countrymen. They want to see the people that, that they're cheering for compete, but they also want to see those stars that they've been watching on TV, right? It's like they don't, we hear it from European fans, right? They'd be like, oh, this UFC card, it looks like a Cage Warriors card. I've watched all these guys compete. Same thing in Brazil. I've heard Brazilians be like, man, if you overload it with too many Brazilians, they're like, this is like a jungle fight card. I've watched these guys compete for years or whatever, right? They want to see those stars that they watch on pay-per-view, that they watch compete in the States, competing in their country. So I bet they're more excited about this matchup with Derrick Lewis. And yeah, if they're yelling "Uvai Morer" at him, it'll be with a smile. They'll be like, just kidding, man. You're not really good. We love you, but
yeah, we're gonna cheer for you afterwards, though.
100%, man. He is a fan favorite. There's no way you're a fight fan and you don't love Derrick Lewis, man.
Yeah, got to. And like I said, man, I got to see him back in the day, LFA in Dallas. It was pretty cool seeing him live and not knowing what he would have become. But gosh, we went 25 minutes on MMA. We went 30 minutes on boxing. Never thought we would have said it. So Francis Ngannou, big winner of the weekend. I'm just happy for the guy, but I'm a little bit sad, again, not to rehash what we already talked about, but I just don't see a scenario where he's getting in the cage anytime soon.
It's going to be real interesting to see how things play out. Like I said, the only scenario I see him doing it is that if it's at a PFL event in Saudi Arabia. That's the only way I see it happen, because at that point, I think maybe the Saudis, they come to the table with a little bit. Again, they've got some investment in the PFL, so maybe they're like, you know what, how do we add a little extra juice to this investment? Let's throw a little bit more cheddar that way, and let's bring this guy over here to be in the PFL and to fight in our country once again. So, it's going to be interesting. There's so many variables right now. There's so many different people. I mean, that result threw everything into chaos, man. Everybody had plans. Everybody knew exactly what was in. Now everybody's doing what we're doing and going, well, should we do this? Should we do that? Meanwhile, Francis, I'm sure that flight back home was real controversial. Like, well, looking forward to all these offers coming my way, gentlemen.
Oh my goodness.
Let me know how many zeros we're putting on this. So let me know where you want me to compete.
A lot of things are in flux, but what's not in flux is where we're both going to be this weekend. It's not Sao Paulo, but Brazil for UFC Fight Night on Saturday night. But on Friday night, where are we going to be, John Morgan?
We are going to be at the Horseshoe Tunica Hotel and Casino for a CFFC 127 on UFC Fight Pass. Cannot wait. It's going to be a great card. We got a strawweight title fight in the main event, a couple of undefeated prospects in Fatima Klein and Jasmine Navarrete. So a great main event. Jamel Jones is back to face Jesse Murray. That could be a great one there. Kevin Peace is back. Just some talent up and down. And that venue is such a cool venue, man.
Yeah, the Hard Rock.
The way it's Horseshoe.
Yeah. But what's the name of the venue inside the Horseshoe? What was that called?
I can't remember.
But it is just this amphitheater, cool venue. It is. It's like one of my favorite places to ref, just because everything's on one side. It's awesome, 2-tiered.
Yep, the way the building's laid out, the energy in there, man, it's always exciting, man. The fans, and it's some fun fans down there. They make it so exciting, and it is part of a huge week for the UFC. We got crazy. We're kicking off CFFC Match Day this week as well, right? So, we talked about some boxing. We talked about some MMA. We might as well mention some college wrestling as well, because, man, I mean, to me, there is no greater base to start from in mixed martial arts than wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, if you can, not only is it the skills that you learn in wrestling, but it's the work ethic as well that you learn in wrestling. And so it's fantastic. And so now we're going to see this on UFC Fight Pass. So to give you a little taste, I am leaving tomorrow to go to Fayetteville, North Carolina, because on Wednesday we will have an event at Fort Liberty, which will be awesome. It's the same venue that used to be called Fort Bragg. It got renamed, but we'll do a college wrestling event inside an airplane hangar there on the military base. Awesome. Which, I mean, the scenes that you see there are unbelievable. So we got 2 duels that way. It'll be Campbell versus West Point, which is, how cool is that? I mean, Army West Point is wrestling on an Army base, in North Carolina State versus Presbyterian. Then we go to Memphis and then head down to Tunica for the event on Friday, which I'm looking forward to as well. And the next day, on Saturday, we fly out because we got an event in the Cleveland area on Sunday. So we got another wrestling event there. That'll be Cleveland State versus Iowa State. So so it's Wednesday wrestling, Friday MMA, Sunday wrestling. The CFFC crew has got a busy week, and I'm looking forward to it, man. It'll be cool. And I think this could be the start of a real cool initiative on UFC Fight Pass. So if you're a wrestling fan and you don't have UFC Fight Pass, sign up. By the way, I'll give you a
3
code.
months.
3 months for the price of one, right? So if you use the code DUAL, DUAL, like a wrestling duel, You get 3 months for the price of 1 month, man. So if you've never been a Fight Pass subscriber and you've been thinking about it, there's no better time to do it than right now. You get 3 months for the price of one.
I got it.
So,
get it. It's just awesome. If nothing else, man, their archives are unbelievable.
Exactly. You want to go back and you want to watch Eric McMahon in action in the cage, you can do that. You want to go back and hear John Morgan on the mic, you can do that. And there's some other stuff on there too. There's some other stuff, but that's probably what you want to see. Yeah, I've heard. They've got a couple 10, 20,000 bouts on there, but that's the stuff you really want to see.
Man, this has been a fun episode. It kind of got off the rails just talking about all these crazy scenarios. Like I said, who are the winners and losers? It took us all these scenarios, which they're all plausible. They're all either likely or unlikely, but what isn't up for debate, Francis Ngannou won the weekend, even in defeat. It was awesome. This weekend, UFC in Brazil, not to be outdone, Friday night from a sold-out Horseshoe Casino in Tunica, Mississippi, Cage Fury Fighting Championships. That man is going to be on the call. This man is going to be the third man inside the cage saying, no poking in the eyes. Don't kick in the balls. I'm calling balls and strikes straight down the middle.
CM Punk will be there to talk trash about you. It'll be fun.
Ah, take a point. Hey, didn't you used to train with this guy, CM Punk? Okay. Nah, man, I love Punk. He's such a good dude, though.
Really good dude, man. I hate some of the stories that are out there because I just don't think they convey what a guy he really is, man. I love working alongside that guy. He is as passionate as they come about MMA, and he's a really good dude.
Yeah, good man. I always like having him on the call too. So anyways, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.